Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Opening Act, a podcast interview show where we interview musicians, athletes, and more. On today's episode, I have Brendan B. Brown. Brendan, also known as BBB, is the lead singer and guitarist of Wheatus. How are you doing today, Brendan?
I'm all right, Brandon. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a good day. So
Cool.
let's go ahead and kick this off. So let's talk about Wheatus. When did you guys become a band?
That's a good question. I was working on Wheatus' first album and a possible second album for many years before we were a group of people. I was doing it alone, had a 4-track, a bass, a microphone, a decent preamp, and I was recording myself singing these songs and arranging drums and bass without anybody else knowing, without anybody else present, wasn't showing it to anybody. I was really just kind of looking for my voice, and that was probably late 95 or 95, 96, 97. And then around 97, put some people together to play shows, and that eventually became Wheatus.
So what kind of music does Wheatus play that you guys
I love
play?
that question. I like to call it sort of heavy, eclectic New York rock. Somewhere between the Talking Heads and Metallica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a lot of what we do is pretty intense and heavy, but it's also pretty quirky, and I'm always looking for like some new way to make a heavy rock song happen that hasn't been maybe thought of yet, or that I've not heard at least. So yeah, that's the vibe. I would call it heavy eclectic New York rock.
Wow, that is unlike any other genre that I've heard of on my show. That's really cool.
I think sometimes I overemphasize that because when we first came out, Southern California, like Orange County punk rock stuff, pop punk was really happening, and they were all 3 pieces, right? Green Day, Blink-182.
Yeah, exactly the ones that come to my mind.
Yeah, and we were a 4-piece, and my percussionist, multi-instrumentalist Phil was the co-producer for the first album, so he's a really important member of the band. And there was a lot of push from the record label to become a 3-piece. They wanted us to be a 3-piece. They wouldn't stop talking about it, so much so that Phil caught wind of it and decided not to sign the record deal because he felt like they didn't want him in the band. And it was true. They didn't want him in the band. But the sad thing was that he was my partner. He was my co-producer on the first record. So it wasn't a compromise that I was willing to make. And they were that was pretty hard, but that's the real long story of like how we're different from the rest of the kind of stuff that was happening at the time, I think.
So how did you come up with the name Wheatus? I don't know.
That was just a nonsense word that my father was using to when we were little kids. He would call us Little, and that kind of morphed into Leedle, and that turned into Wheatle, and that turned into Wheatus. So it was like this little thing that he used to say to us when we were babies, like really small, the 3 of us, my brother, my sister, and myself. And because it was a nonsense word and it didn't really mean anything, that was one of the reasons I liked it for the band name.
Wow. So when did you first discover your love for playing music?
That was a really long time ago. My mother used to tell me stories about how I used to stand in the living room and sort of mime the vocal to Bobby Darin's "Mac the Knife." And then I learned shortly after that how to spool up her reel-to-reel and find secondhand news on Fleetwood Mac's rumors, like with the reel-to-reel, old school reel-to-reel. I knew how to do that when I was very young.
Wow.
And then she taught me how to play My Girl. My mother showed me the guitar riff for My Girl on her nylon string when I was probably 8. And I started playing guitar pretty heavily in the next few years. So, and from that point on, I think when I turned 13 or 14 was when I really started to get serious playing every spare moment that I had playing guitar, you know?
Yeah. Sometimes I like to do that too, just when I'm not doing anything, just play.
Right.
Yeah. Relieves you. It really does. So when did you know that, like, you wanted to pursue a career in music?
You know, sometimes I still don't. My father sold cars and my mother was an interior decorator, and we didn't really know anybody in the music business who had made it as an artist or anything like that. So we were, or I was at least, without an example, you know?
Yeah.
In practical life, like, and to top it all off, I didn't go to music school or anything like that. I never learned how to read music, so I wound up being self-taught, and that goes for like my career as well. You know, I am still very much more connected with the sort of fantasy of becoming a successful musician than I am with the reality of it. As a result, I spent most of my time as a musician not being successful. Even after Teenage Dirtbag came out, people don't know this, but it never was successful in the States when it was first released. And then it became successful in the United Kingdom, and overseas in other places. But we were never there long enough to get used to that. We were always coming home to a place where nobody knew us, you know. So most of our time as musicians, or me in particular, has been spent without being successful. And I still feel a much stronger connection to like the 10-year-old kid who wanted to be Angus Young, you know, than I do to my current self, who's like, you know, I'm almost 50 years old and I run a small company that deals exclusively with my band. And I don't really know how that happened in between. I think it was just figuring it out on my own, you know?
Wow. So to this day, have you learned how to read music, or do you still?
No, I don't know how to read music. I know a little bit. I know enough terminology to get me through a session with people who do read music.
Yeah.
I like working with keyboard players because I can sing the harmonies to them and I can actually find the chords on the keyboard to play. And kind of I make the chords up as I go, you know? So it's all done the wrong way. I'll say that. Not the way that they teach in school.
Yeah. I know how to read treble clef for when I play the trumpet, but when I play the bass, I'm just flying. I don't know what I'm doing because I don't read bass clef at all.
I hear you. I would say this. It might be a good thing to learn in case you ever wind up working for an idiot like me who doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you write music, what bands and songs inspire you?
What bands and songs did you say?
Yeah. What bands? Yeah.
Well, I try not to be thinking about other bands when I'm writing music because you don't want to come out sounding like somebody else, right? So what I do is sometimes I turn on a movie and I mute it and I play and sing and write when I'm watching a film, or the news. Sometimes I do that with the news. I have it on mute. Sometimes in nature, like outside, if it's an interesting day, like aesthetically, you know, something to look at. I also write when I'm traveling. Sometimes when I'm on a boat, I find like every once in a while I'll be on a ferry, you know, and have the ferries. For some reason, I always wind up writing on ferries. It always comes to me. But I try not to think about other artists or other music. Now, if you're asking me who I was inspired by when I was growing up, well, that's easy. Like AC/DC, Rush, um, you know, Tom Petty, Madonna, LL Cool J, Public Enemy, Metallica. Um, Eventually, lots and lots and lots of post-punk bands like Sunny Day Real Estate, Fugazi, Ani DeFranco, Dinosaur Jr., um, Tribe Called Quest, Ice Cube.
Wow.
I listen to so much music I could never sit here and list it, but those are like the big influences. Prince was a huge influence early on. In the 80s, Prince probably influenced me just about as much as anybody else did, from a songwriting perspective and also from a person who can produce their own albums and do all the work, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because he was like that.
Wow.
Yeah, those are the artists.
Wow.
Cyndi Lauper would be another one.
That's so cool that you had so many. Wow.
Oh, so many. So many.
And more. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to listen to all sorts of music, though, because
at
that point you'll never get sick of anything, and you'll just keep being able to go.
Right. I forgot to mention Willie Nelson, huge influence. Willie Nelson and Bob Marley were always on my parents' stereo, and those two are really big points. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So let's talk a little bit about playing concerts and stuff. What is your favorite part about playing live?
We do a lot of work in rehearsal to try and make sure that we're really tight with this music. And my favorite part about playing live is like when you know you're doing it right, and the audience feels that too. Like they know that you've prepared, they know that you've done your homework, and that you're kind of like sharing a little bit of an inside joke about how the song goes with your bandmates because you've worked on it so hard,
Yeah.
That feeling is really something else. It's very special.
Yeah. I bet it feels good when you just know, that you're doing the thing how it's supposed to be, and sometimes better. So I'm sure that you've played a whole bunch of venues in this whole wild career, but do you think you have a favorite venue that you've ever played?
Interesting. I think I have favorite venues in maybe in each city. We're not going to go down that road. Let's just stick to country, okay? My favorite venue in America is probably the Mercury Lounge, which is here in New York. It just sounds really good. It's a very cool little club. I've seen lots of really important shows there. I've played a few great shows there. It's awesome. In Scotland, there's a place called King Tut's, which is amazing. It's like their version of the Mercury Lounge. Totally killer little club. I love that spot. In Ireland, there's a place called Wheatus. That's my favorite. W-H-E, I think it's E-E-L-A-N-S or E-E-L-A-N-S. I'm not sure. E-L or E-E-L, I'm not sure, but it's Waylands it's called, or Wheelands. Those places, those three, are probably my favorite anywhere.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So, on the topic of playing foreign and playing in all sorts of countries, what has been the most interesting country you've gone and performed in?
My favorite place to play is definitely Scotland. They will not let you have a bad show. They want their money's worth, and they're there to rock, and it's going to happen. And they just give you that energy. You could be sick, you could be tired, you could be pissed off, but when you get on stage in Scotland, they're like, no, you're here to rock, and they kind of insist on it, and it works out. It always works out.
Wow. Yeah.
The most interesting place I've ever played was probably a weed farm in rural Missouri, which was such a really very cool. It was like we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and it turned out to be really neat. long story short, somebody kind of ran away with the money, and nobody showed up with the stage or anything. This happens from time to time. It's not very common, but it does happen. And so, but the point is like a whole bunch of people showed up, and there was no stage, no microphones, no nothing. So I just whipped out the acoustic guitar and played a set next to a huge bonfire in the middle of a farm.
What?
And that was awesome. That was cool.
Those
Those people were real dope. Super fun. Glad we did it. Scary at first, but it totally worked out.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many people were at that show?
Man, I think there was like 100 people there that night after it got canceled.
That's still a lot. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, the show was like kind of canceled, and like, you know, there was no show. Like, it was just me by a bonfire, but still 100 people showed up. So it was really neat. It was really cool. I liked it.
Yeah. Sounds like they went to have fun and came out that way too.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Wow. So besides those great stories, do you have any other favorite school appropriate concert or tour stories?
School appropriate. I forgot about that part. Thank you for reminding me.
You're all good.
Oh man, interesting school appropriate stories. That's so tough. Well, let's see.
They can be mildly unschool appropriate too. It doesn't really matter.
I was gonna say that on the first tour I ever did, I got stuck in between in a gun battle. I didn't have a gun, of course not, on the road.
Yeah.
But there was a huge shootout right near our bus, and I was outside at the time, and I had to dive into the luggage bay and close the door. Like, it had nothing to do with me. It had nothing to do with the band. It was just a cop shooting at a criminal and a criminal shooting back or whatever, you know, like, and I was just stuck in the middle of it suddenly and dove into the luggage bay of the bus.
That's terrible.
Yeah.
Talk about being in
terrifying.
The wrong place at the wrong time.
It was very scary. It was very much like that. But, you know, you realize when you go out into the world to do all this stuff, you meet and encounter thousands of people. You're in hundreds of neighborhoods and different cities and all this stuff. And, you know, you're just rolling the dice. Something weird's going to happen. This is the nature of touring, you know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say that there are lots of stories that are popping into my mind that are absolutely bananas, right? You wouldn't believe it. But not all of them are good for high school students, right? These are not good stories to tell. None of them involve anything crazy with myself or the band. It's always some kind of weird circumstance that, like, you didn't see coming, you know? There's always like a surprise, like some crazy thing that happens in a venue where you're like, oh my God, really? You know? Yeah. I remember this one time at the end of a show, I don't know why they thought this was a good idea and didn't talk to us about it. But as soon as we finished playing, the venue dropped bubbles on everybody.
Oh, geez.
Like foam, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And we have electronics on stage. We can't get away. So, here's one. Here's a good one. Okay, so we played South Africa in 2019. It was the second time we ever went there. And the first gig was on a mountain at a cheese farm way up in, like, the bush, like in the jungle, right? And it was monsoon season. And there's 20,000 people at this festival waiting for us to play. And the show is delayed because it's raining sideways. I mean, the rain was like coming up from the ground. It was windy so hard. It was blowing so hard, the wind. And it was a monsoon, you know? And the roads are starting to get washed out and everyone's getting a little concerned. So we finally get up there at 1:00 in the morning and play our set. And we're just at the end of Teenage Dirtbag, you know, where it goes into the girl part. I'm supposed to sing the girl part. And my whole band are looking over to the left, right? And I'm like, why is everybody looking over there? I look over there, and there's like a whole bunch of cops with, bulletproof vests and everything, and they're telling me to stop. And the reason they're telling me to stop is because the stage was kind of collapsing from the wind, right?
Oh my goodness.
So we stopped playing in the middle of like never finished Teenage Dirtbag, right? They shut us down.
Oh.
A few of our laptops got destroyed from the rain. We packed everything down as fast as we could. We get back behind the stage. There was a tent. And as soon as we get to the tent, the lights turn off. So now we're in a tent in the jungle on a mountain in South Africa in a monsoon, and it's pitch black, right? And we're soaked. So we had to like climb up the mountain a little bit further to get to the actual farmhouse. Everybody went to bed. I dried everybody's clothes on a giant fireplace that they had in there. And then I found a guy with a tractor, big farm tractor, who could pull our van down the mountain because the roads were washed out. This is 4 o'clock in the morning. I find this guy. He's got the tractor and the keys for it. He ties a rope to our van and pulls it down a mountain road that's kind of washed out from the rain. Slippy slidey. It was a little crazy. Got a little sketchy at times. We get down there, and he lets us go. And the driver starts driving down the road, and he stops. And he's like, I can't go through this puddle. Huge puddle in front of him. So I was like, maybe I should get out and put a stick in it, see how deep it is. And he goes, no, don't do that. There might be beasts out there. And I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, jackals and lions are out there. you can't just jump out of the car in South Africa in the middle of the night in the jungle. And so okay. So he finally drives through. We get to our hotel while the sun is rising, and we turn on the news, and there's a news report about how the South African military had to come in to save everybody who had gone to the festival because the roads were all washed out. They needed military vehicles to pull everybody out of there. So we were the last people to get out before it was too late, kind of thing.
Oh my goodness.
It was crazy. And we had a show the next day.
Dang.
So yeah. That's
Wow.
a story. That's a high school safe story, I guess.
I think they were all fine. Man.
Sorry, my high school was really strict. I went to a boys' Catholic school, so that's how I think about it. But
well, if there's one thing I've learned from your stories is that touring is scary.
Touring can be pretty scary. Yeah, it can.
We have a movie coming out soon.
Yeah, we have a movie coming out called. It's a documentary about it called "You Might Die," which is essentially an acknowledgement that touring is a little bit dangerous. Now, most of the time nothing bad happens. Most of the time it's just pure fun, right?
Yeah.
But once in a blue moon, some crazy thing happens, and you're like, "What am I doing with my life? What is this?"
Wow. Well, I can't wait to see that. That sounds exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So then we were talking a little bit about this earlier with Teenage Dirtbag absolutely exploding in countries like England. And what was it like to just see that happen?
It was really strange and wonderful, but also really strange. We had kind of come to a point where we'd almost given up on the album when it happened. So it was a surprise, and in some sense, we never believed it because it just felt like, oh, come on, really? Now? Like all these months after, years after it's been out, we're supposed to go play a show in the center of London at Hyde Park with Beyonce and Meatloaf. Like, what are you kidding me? Like, that's weird, It was strange. But we got used to it a little bit, enough to become like a touring band, and and that worked out for the long run, which I'm happy about. But at first it was like unexpected and super strange.
Wow. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about Teenage Dirtbag since we're
Sure.
on that. What was the inspiration behind that song? And I know there's some good YouTube-sized documentaries on there, but please share what you want about that.
Well, so basically Teenage Dirtbag is like a fantasy, right? It never happened to me. I went to a boys' school. That was not Teenage Dirtbag is not real. It's based, the setting, the place that it was from was Long Island in 1984, where I grew up, and that wasn't a particularly nice place. It was a little bit rough, and as you may or may not know, there was the murder. But basically, that all happened, and the term dirtbag became this thing that was like really bad, right?
Yeah.
Except I liked that music too, and I wasn't like a murderer. So I was caught in this kind of like, imagine if something you really like and you're really into suddenly becomes like, super bad. Everyone thinks so. Everyone's like, oh man, you're into that, and AC/DC is not, will never be a bad thing. But at the time it was. At the time it became that where I lived. And basically the dirtbag vibe is like, what it's really inspired by is like, even if it costs you your whole entire social life or any kind of happiness, you got to stay true to the things that you love, right? And for me, that was AC/DC and Iron Maiden and that kind of music at the time. That's how I identified. I was kind of like becoming a person listening to this music, finding out who I was. And suddenly another person had done something really, really bad. And it was like, you're going to be identified like that? I had a choice to make, and the choice I made was to remain a dirtbag in spite of the fact that meant that teachers and parents and other people, priests or whatever, thought that you were a real bad kid,
Yeah, I respect
that.
I
would assume it's something similar today would be like if you had a gay friend at school, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly everyone was like, that's not okay. You have a choice then. You still be friends with that person or abandon them, right?
Yeah.
It's part of your identity for the rest of your life, who you're going to be based on that decision. Goes past high school, goes past everything, right? And, I guess that's correct me if I'm wrong, but that could be another example, of something like that. It's about staying true to yourself, like who you are, what you believe.
Yeah.
And not being shaped too much by everybody else's opinion.
That's such an important thing too. I hope that so many people can learn that, or if they have learned it, can retain that just doing what you know is right and doing, even if it publicly might not be, just going with what you believe. Because
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's how we learn to be independent. Independence and freedom are like things that we have to choose, and sometimes they cost something, your reputation or what people think of you at school or something like that. But you only get one chance. You got to do it right,
Wow. I'm almost left speechless after that one. That's
well, one chance to be yourself, and you're doing that right now, right? You have your show. You're talking to me.
Yeah.
You're talking to people who you find you want to talk to. You're doing your own thing. That's independence. That's freedom.
Yeah.
If suddenly somebody told you tomorrow it's not cool to have a radio show anymore, it's the work of the devil, you would say, well, that's just too bad.
Yeah, I'd still do it. I'm like, I'm having fun and
exactly.
I'm doing things I've always wanted to. So yeah.
There you go. That's you being yourself and not worrying about it.
Yeah. Wow. That is so motivating. Like, the story behind all that. After playing so many shows, I'm sure that you've shared the stage and met many really cool people. Who's your favorite person that you have met?
That's an interesting question. Probably my favorite person that I've ever met. I have two role models / friends, people who I looked up to before I met them, and then became friends with them, right? One of those people is Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional.
Oh,
I had seen him on TV, doing his thing on MTV with Dashboard, and thought he had a great voice and wrote great songs and was a great guitar player, the whole package,
yeah.
And I was like, this kid is dope,
Yeah.
I hope we get to tour with them one day. I remember thinking that. And he called me up in 2007 and asked me to jump on stage with him at a show to play Teenage Dirtbag out of the clear blue. We'd never met. And I did it. And he still keeps in touch. He's like a real pal. Like he reaches out to me all the time, see how I'm doing.
Wow.
We hang out if we're on the same festival. We hang out and talk to each other, have good chat. He's just a real friendly guy, and he's a good person to know. He's the real thing.
That
And
is
the other
so
guy,
cool.
the other guy is Art Alexakis from Everclear. And I knew about Art a long time before I knew about Dashboard. Art to me was like a rock star. He was like Kurt Cobain or something. He was like this guy who was like, killing it with these songs, Santa Monica and Father of Mine and all these tracks that I was just like, wow, this guy's really good, man. And that was like when I was like 19 years old, 20 years old, 25 years old. I was like, wow, Everclear is amazing. And they invited us to tour in 2021. And he turned out to be the nicest guy, total role model, father figure. I call him my big brother. He's like, he turned out to be one of those dudes who was just like, he's been doing this for 30 something plus years, 40 years almost. He's super responsible. He works really hard. He wants everybody else on the tour to work. He's like that's what I call him. Like I was like, I want to work for this guy. Like I don't mind calling him my boss, like being on tour. Like he's just like the real McCoy, he's like the dude. And those two people, give me a lot of faith in humanity, because the music industry can be a tough game. You're trying to make your own way and figure it out. And you don't have a lot of role models, and you don't have a lot of people who like look out for you, give you good advice. And those two people in my life have been like really special. So I'm lucky.
Wow. That is so cool. I would love to meet them someday. That's for sure.
Yeah, man, you will.
I sure hope so. Wow.
Just keep doing it. Keep doing this thing. You will. You'll bump into them. Are you out west somewhere?
Oh yeah, I'm in Montana.
Oh, where in Montana?
Deer Lodge. I don't know if you've ever been to Montana, but it's
yeah, I have. Is that near Butte?
Yes, it is near Butte. We're like 30 miles away from Butte.
Right. So I went to Butte, Montana, fly fishing with my father one time.
Wow.
Yeah, we went up where I caught a record grayling. I caught a 17-inch grayling on that trip.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah.
Dang.
I love to fish, and Montana is just like the most beautiful place to do it. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. I love fishing here. Just never gets old. Yeah.
No,
especially
never.
Around this time of year, everybody's like, "Oh, I hate the ice. I hate the snow." And I'm not gonna lie, I'm not a huge fan of it either. But the ice fishing, it's so incredible sometimes.
Yeah. It seems fun. It seems real fun.
Yeah.
I've never ice fished, but my cousins in Minnesota ice fish, and they have a good time.
Yeah, you'll have to go sometime. It's good. It's fun.
Look, next time I'm in Montana, I got your number now. You got to take me fishing, all right?
There you go. Yeah, I'll take you. Just call me up.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, Brandon. Well,
I just wanted to say real quick, thank you so much for doing this, and it's been amazing talking to you. I've really been looking forward to this, and it's been wonderful. Yeah. I look up to you, so I hope you know that. And yeah, it's been wonderful talking to you.
Thanks, man. It's been an honor. Thanks, Brandon. This is really cool. I love what you're doing. We'll keep an eye on you. We'll keep in touch, and one of these days you're going to be on doing this in a big format somewhere, definitely.
Yeah.
And we'll meet each other again, I'm sure. But it's an honor, and it's super cool that you're doing this, and I'm glad we got the chance to do it. And thank you for reaching out to us, because it's people like you who keep us on the map. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, and I guess I hope you enjoyed the rest of your day.
Yeah, man. You too. All right. Thanks, Brandon. I'll speak to you again soon. Take care.
Okay. Thank you. Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. And before you go, I just wanted to say thank you so much to my school, Powell County High School, for letting me use their podcast equipment. And thanks to Mr. McConaughey and Miss Beery, and big thanks to all the other teachers here for helping inspire me and help put this podcast on. And a really big thank you to Brendan. That was an amazing experience, and I'm so happy he wanted to do this. And also a big thanks to you, the viewer, for watching and listening. Please consider liking this video, subscribing, and sharing with your friends. It really does help me out as I'm trying to get this podcast to other people and to as many people as I can. So thank you, and have a good one.